The night it all began, Claire sat alone by the kitchen window, staring out into the quiet streetlights of her neighborhood. The world outside seemed so alive, cars passing by, laughter echoing faintly from a house down the block, but inside her own home, there was silence. A silence so heavy that it felt almost louder than sound. Claire had been married to Daniel for over 12 years. To anyone looking from the outside, they were the picture of stability. A nice home, steady jobs to children who brought them joy and purpose. Friends often told her how lucky she was to have a marriage that seemed unshaken by time. But what no one could see was the growing emptiness inside her heart. She couldn't quite put her finger on when the shift happened. Maybe it was after the children were born, when late-night feedings replaced late-night conversations. Maybe it was during the years when Daniel worked long hours, coming home too tired to talk about anything beyond bills and schedules. Or maybe it was simply time itself, slowly turning passion into routine, and routine into silence. Claire remembered the girl she used to be, the one who laughed at Daniel's silly jokes, who stayed up past midnight dreaming about the future, who believed that their love could survive anything. But now when she looked at him across the dinner table, she saw a stranger who had once been her everything. That evening had been no different. Dinner was quiet, filled with the clinking of forks and the occasional question about homework. Daniel had scrolled through his phone after eating, retreating into his own world while Claire cleared the dishes. And yet as she carried plates to the sink, she had caught herself glancing at him, wondering silently, does he still see me the way he once did? Or am I just another part of the routine he no longer notices? The thought unsettled her. She longed for something she couldn't quite name, not escape, not adventure, but connection. She wanted to feel the warmth of his presence again, to know that the love they had built hadn't disappeared, only hidden. But Claire didn't know how to bridge the gap between them. The distance wasn't marked by arguments or anger. It was marked by absence, by the words left unspoken and the moments left unlived. That night, she lingered by the window long after the children had gone to bed. The glow of the streetlight cast a pale reflection across her face, and in it, she saw a woman who was tired of pretending everything was fine. She whispered softly to herself, "Something has to change." And yet, as much as she longed for change, she didn't know where it would come from, more, if it would come at all. Part of her feared that she and Daniel had already lost too much, that the spark had burned out and couldn't be lit again. Another part of her, the quieter, more hopeful part, held onto a fragile belief that somewhere beneath the silence, love was still waiting to be found. It was that quiet hope that kept her from giving up. Every night as she tucked herself into bed beside a husband who turned to the other side, she told herself tomorrow might be different. Tomorrow he might notice the way she lingered by the window. Tomorrow he might reach for her hand again, the way he used to when love was new and effortless. But as the weeks turned into months, tomorrow never seemed to arrive until one winter evening, when something unexpected happened, something that would break the silence and test everything they thought they knew about love, marriage, and second chances. Claire didn't know it yet, but that night would become the night that changed her marriage forever. Claire didn't fall asleep right away that night. She lay in bed, listening to the steady rhythm of Daniel's breathing, staring at the ceiling as memories flooded her mind. It often happened when she felt most alone. Her heart would travel backward, searching for the pieces of love that had once held them so tightly together. She remembered the very first time she met Daniel. It had been at a small bookstore downtown. She was searching for a novel for a college assignment, and he had been standing in the same aisle, reaching for the exact same book. Their hands brushed, and Daniel, with his easy smile, had said, "Looks like we've got the same taste." So it's such a simple beginning, but to Claire, it felt like the start of something extraordinary. Those early days were filled with laughter. They'd spend hours talking in coffee shops, losing track of time, sharing stories about their childhood dreams and their hopes for the future. Daniel had a way of making her feel seen, like every word she spoke mattered. She often thought back to the night he took her to the lake just outside the city. The two of them sat on the hood of his car, staring at the stars, and Daniel had whispered, "I think I could love you forever." At the time, it sounded young and bold, but it was sincere. Claire had believed him, and for many years he kept that promise. Their wedding day had been filled with joy, laughter, and a kind of unshakable faith that they would weather anything. They built a life together, step by step, celebrating every small success and comforting each other through every setback. Claire could still remember the first apartment they shared, how the roof leaked in the rain, and how they laughed as they set buckets across the floor. They had no money, no luxury, but they had each other. And that was enough. So how had they ended up here, sitting across the dinner table as strangers? The truth, Claire thought, was that love wasn't lost in one single moment. It was chipped away slowly by the weight of unspoken worries and the demands of everyday life. Children, while a blessing, brought exhaustion that left little room for late-night talks. Bills and responsibilities replaced spontaneity. And Daniel, once so open with his feelings, had grown quieter over the years. When she tried to ask about his day, his answers grew shorter, like pieces of himself he no longer wished to share. And Claire, tired, uncertain, afraid of rejection, stopped asking. There were times she wanted to reach across the silence and remind him of their younger selves, to say, "Do you remember the bookstore, the lake, the promises?" But the words stayed inside her, unspoken. And with each unspoken word, the distance grew as she lay in the dark beside him. Claire realized that what hurt most wasn't anger or betrayal, it was the ache of being unseen. She missed the man who used to notice the little things about her. The way she hummed when she cooked, the way she laughed before finishing a story, the way her eyes lit up at the first snow of the season. He used to look at her as though she was his whole world. Now his eyes were always somewhere else. And yet, despite the ache, she couldn't let go of the memories. They were reminders of what had once been real, and maybe what could be real again. She clung to them like fragile threads of hope. One memory in particular surfaced that night. It was from their 5th anniversary. Daniel had surprised her with a picnic in the park, complete with her favorite sandwiches and a small cake he had baked himself. She had laughed at how unevenly the frosting was spread, but the sweetness of the gesture had moved her to tears. Daniel had kissed her forehead and said, "I may not be perfect, but I promise to keep trying." That promise echoed in her mind now, all these years later. She wondered if he remembered it too. Or had the years blurred it away like so many other moments between them? As sleep finally began to take her, Claire whispered a thought into the darkness. I thought she dared not say out loud. If only he would try again. Maybe I could too. She didn't know that soon. An unexpected moment would bring those buried memories rushing back, and force them both to face the question they had avoided for so long. Was their love truly gone? Or was it still waiting to be found beneath the silence? The days after that quiet night by the window felt no different on the surface. Life carried on with its familiar rhythm work. School runs, bills to pay, dinners to cook. Yet beneath the routine, Claire carried a weight she couldn't shake. The memories of their past lingered in her heart, whispering questions she wasn't ready to answer. Then, fate intervened in the simplest of ways. It was early December, and Daniel came home with an invitation in his hand. One of his colleagues was hosting a holiday gathering. And though he rarely suggested social events, he asked if Claire wanted to join him. Her first instinct was to say no. The thought of smiling politely, pretending to be cheerful among strangers, felt exhausting. But then she noticed something in his flicker of hesitation, as if he was quietly hoping she would agree. Against her own doubts, she said yes. The night of the party, Claire stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, not even Daniel. But there was a part of her that wanted to remember what it felt like to care about how she looked. She chose a soft blue dress she hadn't worn in years, the one Daniel once said made her eyes shine. For a moment, she almost felt like the girl he had met in that bookstore all those years ago, at the gathering. The room buzzed with music, laughter, and the hum of conversation. Claire felt out of place at first, standing quietly by Daniel's side as he introduced her to coworkers. But then, something unexpected happened. She looked across the room and saw Daniel laughing, really laughing in a way she hadn't seen in years. His eyes crinkled at the corners, and for a moment he looked just like the boy she had fallen in love with. Her heart stirred. It wasn't jealousy, nor was it longing for attention. It was a reminder. A reminder that somewhere beneath the exhaustion and silence, that man still existed. Later, as they left the party and walked through the cold night air, their breaths rising like small clouds, the silence between them felt different. It wasn't heavy, it was waiting. Then Daniel stopped suddenly. He turned to her, his hands buried deep in his coat pockets, and said softly, "Claire, I miss us." The words struck her like a spark in the dark. She searched his face, half expecting to see hesitation. But instead, she saw honest awe, unpolished and real. For a moment, Claire couldn't speak. Her throat tightened with years of unspoken feelings. Finally, she whispered, "I miss us too." That short exchange was small, but it felt like a door unlocking back at home. Instead of retreating to separate corners of the house, they sat together at the kitchen table. At first, neither knew what to say. Then slowly the words began to come, tentative, halting, but genuine. They talked about the distance that had grown between them, about how easy it had been to let routine steal their time, about how neither of them had wanted to admit how lonely they both felt. There were tears, and there was laughter, too nervous, fragile, but real. They weren't trying to solve everything in one night. They were simply daring to speak, daring to look at each other not as strangers, but as the people who had once promised to love without end. For the first time in years, Claire felt hope, not the fragile. Flickering hope, she whispered to herself at night, but a living, breathing hope born from honesty. As she watched Daniel that night, she realized that love wasn't gone. It had only been waiting for them to stop hiding behind silence and remember who they once were. And so, what began as an ordinary evening holiday party, a walk home under the winter sky, became the night that changed their marriage forever. Because sometimes, it isn't grand gestures or dramatic events that save love. Sometimes, it's a single moment of truth, spoken softly in the cold, that brings two hearts back to life.